Okay, so let's start to build out a bit more of the back here. And this will also sort of help us figure out sort of exactly how far back these points need to come. So what I'm going to do is, well, for one, I'm just going to adjust where this is sitting. So I'm just going to pull it over a bit more. And I can actually see there's a bit of curvature on this as well. So I'm actually just going to pull these across to just sort of make a bit of that curve appear there. And I might even just sort of space and relax those out a bit. Cool. And so with this back vertex here, just going to drag this down to sit flush into this corner. And I'm just going to check that against the back here, if I can see it, which I can. So yeah, we can see we've pulled this in way too far here, so I'm just going to pull this back on the X to have it sit there. And then we can actually make the adjustment for the rest of this. So we can just snap that back to that position. And then with all of this, oops, go around that way. I'm going to scale X 0, flatten all of that out. Or actually, maybe not. Let's just drag this back to there. That's not going to work well, is it? Okay, let's just grab these ones, and we'll move that back to sit there, so it's not as intense. And then to sort of make the rest of it make more sense, let's just grab these front ones, G, G, E, F. And we can just sort of conform that shape a little bit. We can adjust it as needed later on. And then from the back here, I mean, this pretty much just goes completely straight, but just gonna go there. Because I can actually see that what should be happening here is that this sort of actually tails off. And all of that sort of forms into here. So what I'm going to do for the time being is I'm just going to delete those faces that we put in. I know it undoes a bit of our work. And we can start to build this section out. So let's duplicate this, drag it down on the Z just to line it up with the back edge there. Then let's push it in on the X. Did I have that aligned properly at the back here? Yep, so we got that. I'm actually just going to scale Z 0. Oops. Just rotate it to fit. Just use G. Put that into the corner there, and then have a look from the side again. Drag this back on the Y. So just for reference, I'm looking over at the right vertex here. I'm not worried about the rest of them. And I'm just going to merge this one to that one. I think that should work. Okay, it's a bit off kilter with where that's sitting, but that's okay. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some manual alignment for these ones. So I'm just going to push that in, pull that up, Yeah, pull those up, and then from the side, that's looking pretty alright. It's all a bit wonky, so I'm just going to relax those. I think the spacing should be okay. Actually, we can just check it. No, we can, yeah, space. It's alright. Cool, so we have most of the faces there. We just need an extra face so that we can account for this little bevel on the edge. Fill that in. It's starting to come out nicely. I'm also just going to hide our bolt collection. And I'm just going to just name these bolts as well, just for a bit of organization. They're just called bolt. Bolt, there we go. Normally got terrible asset management, so that's a first for me. Grab this, extrude this down. Once again, I'm just looking over at the right to align things at the moment. It's just sort of giving me a bit more of a solid foundation of where things need to go. And I'm just going to adjust the position of this a bit. Looking pretty good. I just want to rotate this down because it doesn't look to be perfectly straight. Oops. Just down to about there. That looks pretty nice. And I think this should sort of connect with this back face here. And annoyingly, these don't actually sit flush with one another. So guess we can just fill in an extra face between them. Because as I said earlier, just thinking about the baking process for this later, I know that you'll get a whole lot of baking errors in there, so I don't really want these to be connected meshes, but might have to. Maybe we can just clean it up later on. Yeah, screw it. Let's go with connected meshes. So what we'll want to do, just while we're here, before we go ahead and start to connect these meshes together, we just want to cut these vent details in just so that we have the right topology count ready to go as we get these meshes connected. Well, they're already kind of connected, I suppose, but doing it properly. So let's just bring our 3D cursor over here. And let's bring in a circle and change its count to 16 vertices. We'll rotate that on the Y and just bring it down to size roughly. Cool, and let's just apply the scale. Just bring that along. So I'm just kind of getting the outermost vertex here roughly aligned on the outermost edge of the detail that we're looking at. And let's just go ahead and we can dissolve those. Actually, is that the best way to do it? No, sorry. Let's delete these vertices. Duplicate this, rotate it 180 degrees around the x-axis. And then we'll just connect those edges again. And so we just want to work very simply, so we'll just work along the y-axis for the time being. And let's just pull that out to a point where it roughly lines up there. Now, what we're going to do is, because we don't really want to cut this directly into our mesh because it just becomes too hard to work with one design on a curved surface. So what I'm going to do is get a shrinkwrap modifier. The target's going to be our helmet, or cube as it's called here, because I've got no asset management. And still with the 3D cursor as our pivot point, let's just rotate this on the X until it sort of starts to take shape here. So we can see if we look at the back, it's nicely shrink wrapped to our mesh there. And so all we want to do here is, it's just going to be a little bit of trial and error. It might actually be easier from the back view. If we just keep on pulling this along, we should be able to do it on the x-axis. Yeah, that's very easy. Pull that along the x-axis, and then if we were to rotate this whole thing, actually do this from the side. I think it gives a bit of perspective. And then we'll see that that lines up there. And the only problem is that this is all sitting behind the mesh at the moment. So if we just come here, what we can see is that this curved surface has 1, 2, 3, 4 edges in the middle here. So let's just go ahead, subdivide, and bump the number of cuts up to 4. And now you'll see our shrink wrap to this mesh. Not 100% perfect, but almost. Completely conforms to the mesh. And I'm just thinking, can't help but feel that that might be getting just a little bit distorted at the back here. So let's just put the 3D cursor to there, and let's just make this conform a little bit more to the shape, just so it's not getting so crushed out. There we go. That just makes it a little bit more rounded. It's not too important, but just will help with the shape just a touch. And then we can just duplicate this and eyeball it and line it up at the bottom, which looks good. Cool. Alright, so going back to the actual mesh here, let's just kind of outline where these sit. So let's put a loop in the middle, and then let's put one loop on the outside of the bottom vent detail, and one loop on the outside of the top vent detail. And so what I'm going to do with these is I'm actually going to apply these shrink wraps. And we can just go ahead, oops, actually, I just realized I forgot one part. Let's go to the back, and let's make one more loop at the back here. It's going to be a bit tight, but we'll just place a support loop at the back here. Actually, I might, sorry, let's go backtrack a second here. I might just actually adjust where these are sitting, because it's probably a bit too far along for my liking. Bring those back just a smidge. Now, sorry, we can go ahead, add that loop in just around there, and we'll need to reapply these shrink wraps. And speaking of shrink wraps, while we're here, let's just go ahead and let's just get a duplicate of this area. Oops, didn't want to duplicate that as well. Duplicate this. And I'm just going to rename this as vent underscore shrink. And I'm just going to have that on hand just in case what we do now sort of creates a bit of distortion. So at least then we have a point that we can refer back to. And I'm actually just thinking, let's just bevel this bit in the middle here. Just a little bit. You'll see why we've done all this in just a second. So we'll go ahead and we'll delete those faces. We'll grab our 2 extra bits of detail and we're going to join them into the rest of the mesh. And now comes the fun part where we can go ahead and actually join these into the rest of the objects here. So we'll just slowly build this together, and we can adjust the positions of loops in a moment, and it looks like that shrink wrap mesh that we created is actually going to come in handy here because of what we're going to need to adjust. Cool. Alright, so let's just hide this top row, L to select. Oops, because I connected it over here. Just No, actually, just delete that. I don't need it at the moment. I'll sort that out later. This is just turning into a massive selection. Let's hide that row of vertices, and we'll select these vertices. There we go, that's better. And let's create a new vertex group, and let's call this like vent. And assign that, and we can just see that that's been assigned on the back here. It's kind of bleeding up and around, it should be alright. And then we'll get a shrinkwrap modifier. Target be the vent shrink, and we want to use our vertex group so that we can see the rest of the helmet. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we're going to want to adjust some of these vertice positions using some edge slides, and what this is going to assure is that we can't actually move it beyond the bounds of this defined area. So if I disable the shrink wrap, you'll notice I can sort of pull the vertices out and sort of destroy the shape and profile of the curvature, but with it turned on, you'll notice that I can't do that. So this is more just like a safety assurance that we're not going to break any of the shape and form of our topology. So with that, I'm just going to line these verts up just so that everything is more aligned with the original edges and location of topology. Just because when we do curved surfaces, much like earlier when we were editing the loops on the earpiece, we just want everything to line up best as possible when it comes to curved areas, otherwise it starts to all look a bit weird and janky. Fill that in. We're going to need some bits in the middle here. And, okay, so this back part's going to get a bit dense, it's going to seem, but we can definitely make that work. It's all good. Let's just fill in a big end-on back here. Another one there. Oops. There and there. And we'll just cut some more topology into the back here. And I know this is probably seeming very counterintuitive to what I was saying earlier, where we want to keep our details simple. Yeah, change of plan. No, it's alright. These are probably more important areas because it does actually influence the flow of the topology a bit more. Oops, don't scale. Alright, there we go. So, we've got a nice profile built out here. And so now what we need to do is we just need to get like a nice support loop that can run the length around both of these areas. And we've got most of the topology to be able to do that. So to make it easier, instead of going and doing it manually, let's just select the outer extremities of these faces here. And we'll use one of the same tricks from earlier. We'll go I, and with B, we're just going to bring it into the bounds. No, we're not, sorry. Don't use B. And we can get a bit of clipping going on between them. It's okay. Do that. I'm just going to go Shift and H. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of this outside loop that's been made that's all square, because that's not actually helping define our edge flow. So we can just Control X, dissolve that. And now you'll notice what we've got here is we've got a free edge loop created there for us. So I'm just going to grab this, I'm just going to do an edge slide, bring this down to make it a little bit more even. And it turns out I don't actually need these like I thought I would, so let's just go ahead, put a loop in the middle and dissolve these. And what we can do now is, let's just bring these points out to the edges here. cut these in because we might be able to make some messy topology here, but get away with it. Might actually, no, it may not be as accurate to the details that we've modeled. Well, sorry, the reference image, my bad. I think I might just move these in a bit more. And keep in mind, the movement of that will be fine because we've got that shrink wrap, so it will perfectly move it along the curvature of the surface. So that's looking good. I'm just going to adjust the thickness of these supporting edge loops because they're a bit tight at the moment and we do have more space to work with. Use control, it's just going to be easier. I'm going to use E and F to keep the shape. Sort of bring those out just a little bit more. Cool, and just actually looking at this, so this area we can definitely clean up by doing that. Make a nasty pole over there. And we can do the same thing here. So there's a bit of wonkiness on our mesh at the moment, even though we've actually done a really good job of trying to keep it all clean, and that is a result of the shrink wrap, unfortunately. So I'm going to adjust this. So let's just go ahead, apply the shrink wrap because it's served its purpose for what we've needed. And let's just go and clean this up because this is very, very wonky and I don't like the way it looks. Bottom one's kind of alright. GGEF. Oops. EF. So there we go. Now it's nice and clean. Just being a bit meticulous there. And we can go and do the same thing again. Just bring it back. But now you see we're working with some nicer looking topology. Okay, so sorting out the rest of the topology here. Just want to have a look. I'm just going to turn the shrink wrap off for a second to get a better read of how this looks. And this looks pretty nice. So I don't think we're going to need to worry too much about making triangles here. Let's just see if it pinches. No, that looks good. Our shrink wrap is most certainly off. Cool. Okay, I think we can get away with using a bunch of triangles here to just resolve these, because even with the shrink wrap, it's not looking to cause any noticeable issues. And let's just look at it under a harsher matte cap. No, can't see any pinching, so our topology around there is more than supportive of what we need. Let's go back to this one. So that is awesome. That just means we can be a little bit messier with how we resolve these. I might just have to check that one because this is going to be a pretty intense pole. Because it's got a lot of edges pointing to it. Nope, even that looks good. Cool. And so we can do the same down here. Let's get the shrink wrap off again. And same there. Oops. One more there. And just one more over here. Wow, that's a really dense pole. Let's just make sure that that's not being disrupted. No, it's not. Awesome. Cool, alright. There's definitely some more cleanup that we can do here, so I'm just going to grab this edge. Okay, did not like that. Let's just do a regular edge slide without doing the targeting. Cool, that looks Very, very nice. Alright, so now what we can do is we can just go ahead and fill these faces in. I'm just going to put my shrink wrap back on for the time being, just to help correct any deforms that we possibly get, and then fill in these n-gons. Cool. And while we've still got the shrink wrap on, what I'm going to do is, just for making it easier to see which one of our edges we need to be holding, I'm just going to crease that up. And then, because we want to extrude these inwards, so let's do an inset, bring those in, tab back into object mode, apply our shrink wrap, and then using Alt S, we can just push those in until we get something like that. And we'll just do another inset on these. Oh, actually, no, I think a cleaner way of doing it. Never mind. Let's do a bevel on this inner edge just to create that support loop. And we'll just add one segment to the middle, and we can get rid of the crease on it. And if we look at that, that looks pretty nice and clean. And that's without using our shrink wrap, and it's just all come out nice and cleanly, even though the topology that resolves some of these areas is a bit questionable. It all works out very nicely. And if you want to adjust the depth of these, you can. I'm pretty happy with it being a little bit shallower. The details will then sort of show up. Cool, alright.